Hello chess friends and welcome to Azarov's chess channel and welcome to my basics in chess series. Today again some middle game planning. Middle game planning is the most important thing in a chess game because when you see I often had this problem in a chess game. When I played, I maybe in some games occupied the center, then I tried this flank attack, but the flank attack wasn't good, then I lost the game. Sometimes I tried to break in the center, that wasn't good, I also lost the game. So basically there are these patterns that I want you to recognize sometimes in a chess game. Today we do such a pattern. It's the backward pawn, and of course we don't want to have this backward pawns, but if you recognize this backward pawn in your positions, in your opponent's position, simply play onto that. You don't have to plan anything else. If you see this backward pawn, you can simply play onto that. I hope you realize what I'm trying to say here. So here I wrote you again how you should play against the backward pawn. So you see, you shouldn't allow your opponent to somehow push this backward pawn and improve the position and try to create a blockade against the pawn. So you don't want this pawn to advance, and of course well, this backward pawn by your opponent will be probably well protected. It's not the thing that you can take this backward pawn. It's not that you simply get this pawn very easily, but that's not the problem. While your opponent is protecting this backward pawn, you should gain some space. So this is now a position I've already set up here, and let's see how these principles work in this position. So we have here the position. It was played in 1936 between Mikhail Botvinnik with the white pieces and Jose Raul Capablanca, two former world champions, and here is Mikhail Botvinnik with the white pieces. We have here by Capablanca this backward pawn of d7. I hope you realize, because it's behind this e6 pawn, and it has to be improved maybe with the move d5. And now in the next move Botvinnik plays d4, so he's improving his backward pawn here, this d4, and he wants to play it of course on d4 and trade some pawns here in the center. So we have here now knight on d4, knight takes on d4, bishop takes on g2, king takes on g2, c takes d4, queen takes d4, and you see now the position is in this pattern style here. We have now really a backward pawn on d7, and of course this d7, as said, is very well protected, but of course you won't be able to take this pawn on d7, but meanwhile, while your opponent is simply protecting this d7 pawn, you can gain some space. So let's see how Mikhail Botvinnik does it. So he plays after queen to c7. Of course black is trying here to play maybe rook to d8, but again with the idea to protect the backward pawn, and meanwhile you can gain some space. Of course we have here e4, and we have here now rook to d8, of course. Now, of course, rook to d1, and again I'm pointing you out here. So we are creating a blockade here against this backward pawn. So we are not allowing our opponent to advance the backward pawns. So we are not allowing the move d5. We are not allowing to advance the pawn. I'm pointing again out. This is now our main strategic idea. As I like to say, nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Just if you recognize this pattern, you can play simply onto it. So of course you see black is a little bit stuck here onto the defense of d7, and he will be occupied with the defense of it, and meanwhile we can gain some space. So we have now here the move queen to b7, f3. Of course it's very fine because this queen is on the diagonal of the king, and we have now knight on e8, and now we simply play on the simple idea to block the d pawn. So we are not allowing to play d5. I sometimes annoy myself when I'm repeating this stuff, but I want you really to memorize it, because You see, it's sometimes chess can be so simple if you recognize this position. So we have now this position, and we're simply playing on the blockade here. Rook to d2 is perfectly fine. We are not allowing d5. Now comes f5. Again, this other rook on the blockade on the d file, very nice. So we have now bishop to g5, rook to d3, bishop to f6. I'm not gonna here comment every move from a tactical point of view of the game. I just want you to see the strategical idea on playing of this backward pawn. Of course, maybe in such position were even better moves, but I hope you realize what I'm trying to say. So we have here now after bishop to f6, the opponent allowed here Botvinnik to play e5, and you see, meanwhile we gained even more space here. So now the bishop is under attack, it goes on e7, and meanwhile we gain some space. We have now the pawn on the 5th rank. We are occupying this other half of the board, and again preventing the opponent to play d5 because we can take with en passant, and then the position would be again with the backward pawn on e6. So we would create again a new weakness. While black has maybe solved one problem, he gets another problem in the game. And here comes now queen to f2, which is very fine. We don't want the queen to be on front of the battery. Of course, it's better to have the rook and then the queen behind, because the rook is we don't want our queen to be vulnerable, of course. And we after rook to f7, Botvinnik plays now queen to d2, but which meets again our principle to play on the blockade. Just a little bit improvement here by this very strong grandmaster from the last century. So he was 15 years the alpha and omega in chess, and he's really a good positional player, as you can see. So we have now bishop to b4. You see, black doesn't have these clear ideas here because he's really blocked out with a simple pawn here on e5. And we have now a3, of course, bishop to f8, knight on e2, knight on c7, now knight on f4. Of course, g5 isn't good here. Then we can maybe play knight on h5, and then come on this very nice square of f6. So we have now g6 and now h4. Again, we are really blocking black out here, and now comes b5. We have here c takes b5, knight takes on b5, now rook to c1, which is now attacking the knight. The knight doesn't have good squares. If it goes again back here on e8, it's very bad, because it was already there. And you see, the knight doesn't have good squares, the bishop doesn't have good squares, and I want you really to realize that black is really stuck to the defense of this d7. So he's protecting with 2 rooks. He has and of course the queen here, but they are all protectors of this d7, and then they cannot play like they should. So you see, the white pieces are more active. They're in attacking formation, and it's of course a better position for white. So we have here now queen to b7, and now rook to c7, a tactical shot. We have here queen takes on c7, and we have now knight takes on e6, d takes on e6, and here we managed to get a pawn, and of course this would be a winning position by white. I must confirm here that Mikhail Botvinnik managed even to lose this game, but it doesn't matter. I just wanted to point you out about this backward pawns. It doesn't matter here, this endgame. I just wanted to show it from a middle game perspective here. So here I wanted to show you a game, and here we had the position. It was played by Gunnar Sekaran against Vishwanathan Anand, and Gunnar Sekaran he was there about 2200 rated, and Vishwanathan Anand was about 2700. So I've already analyzed this video in my David versus Goliath series, and the link of this game will be also shown in the end of the video. and but here I wanted to show you the same example with the backward pawn. With this would be then a backward pawn here on c6. So we have here in our last move white castle. So we have here d takes c4, bishop takes c4, b5, of course gaining a tempo. After bishop to d3, we have now a position where black has this backward pawn on c6. So again, let me show you how you should play against the backward pawn. So don't allow your opponent to advance it. So we don't want this move c5. That would be of course an improvement of the position by black. He would gain some space, and we would love to create a blockade here. So we have to block the c5 square somehow, and meanwhile, while black is stuck to the defense on c6, we can gain some space maybe. So of course, you see, it's not easy here for black to play the move c5 immediately because the b5 is hanging. So we have here after bishop h6, then bishop takes on f6, knight takes on f6, and we have now rook to c1, which is sort of indirectly covering this c5. So this is now a perfectly nice move to block the moves of c5. So we are simply playing on this backward pawn again. Again, nothing fancy, nothing special, just to play here against a potential advance of this pawn. So we have here now by Anand a6, which is of course protecting b5, but then preparing also this c5. So now of course we play knight on e4, which is also preventing the c5. So we have now bishop to b7, and now the knight comes on c5. Again, this blocking system against this backward pawn. So we have really blocked out the potential c5 move. So now we have bishop takes on c5, and now pawn takes on c5. And now you see we've managed to get here this bishop very weak, and this is now really a bad bishop because it's really stuck here around its own pawns. So I'm not gonna analyze the position anymore. You can see this video, the whole game at the end of this video, but I just want to point you out how this simple idea of creating a blockade against this backward pawn can be a really effective weapon in the middle game, and I hope you can sometimes recognize the pattern and apply it in your game. So guys, as said, watch all of my basics in chess videos, and here is also the link of this Gunasekaram versus Vishwanathan video, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks you for watching, guys. Chess is the best, of course.